So what's going on guys, Kids here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the top 3 highest damage builds in Once Human. So for every single build I will show you the best weapons and gear that you want to get. Then I will explain every single mod and show you the best cradle upgrades and deviants to use. And then lastly we will take a closer look at the gameplay, so you would know the reason behind every single build choice and what exactly will give us this insane damage and much more. So, if this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So then moving over to the first one, which is the MP7 Outer Space build. And unlike other builds that utilize set pieces and refilling ammo, for this one we will specifically focus only on the highest damage possible by using one of the best gear sets and stacking as many damage increase buffs as possible. So with our build, we will be doing insane damage for both our main and second weapon, and we will switch them depending on who we are fighting. So then let's start with the weapons, and for the first one we are going to be using the MP7 Outer Space. We will have to use this weapon no further than in 23-meter range, or if the enemy is further than that, then our damage will start to drop off. So then in that case we will have to switch to our sniper rifle. And for the mod, I've picked the Surge Amplifier Talents, whose core effect is that dealing power surge damage will give us plus 5% damage increase for 3 seconds, and it can stack up to 4 times. So after our first 4 shots, we will always have 20% damage buff. Then for the second weapon, we have the best sniper in the game, aka the AWS 338 Bingo Sniper Rifle, with the Recover Mark mod, and 4 accessories. For the muzzle, which we are using the large break, then for the optic we have the large optic sight, then for the magazine we have the tactical SR mag, and lastly for ammo we are using the tungsten SR ammo. As most of you know, this is the easiest and best sniper in the game by far, and because we will be constantly moving while shooting, so from dead targeted enemies we will receive 50% HP recovery and 25% stamina. For this build to work, you don't have to use a sniper as a secondary gun. Some people prefer pistols, others to have a crossbow. But if you're looking for the best 2 highest DPS guns, then the MP7 and Bingo Sniper is definitely the best combo. So use your MP7 for close to mid range, and then the sniper for long ranges / boss fights, where you can get easy crits and target the enemy's weak point, and it's that simple. And then lastly for our melee weapon, we will be carrying the Frozen Northern Pike, which is yet again the best melee weapon in the 3rd slot. This build is very OP, because we've chosen only the best of the best items in the game. And then for the mod, we have the Frosty Blessing, which will restore 10% of our HP. So guys, as you can see, this build is overall insane, because we will stack a bunch of damage buffs, and I've gotten multiple times more than 1.5 million DPS in boss fights. So I definitely recommend to try this setup out. Then next up we have the gear set, and we will be using the Savior Gloves with the Status Enhancement Talents, which will increase our status damage by 20%. Then the Mayfly Goggles with the Deviation Expert Talents, which will reduce our range by 25%, but now instead we get 10% fire rate and 20% status damage increase. Then the Savior Mask with the Thunderclap Talents, which after triggering a power surge 20 times, with the next attack will summon a Celestial Thunder, which will do 200% shock damage. Then next up we have the Shelter Pants, with the Bullet Siphon Precision mod, which will increase our weapon's damage by 5%, and every 5 bullets we use, it will give us 4% damage, and this effect can stack up to 5 times. Then we have the Shelter Shoes, with the Slow and Steady Talent mod, which will increase our damage by 10%. And when our HP is above 90%, we will receive additional 10%. And finally for the jacket, we are using the Shelter Top with the Head on Conflict Talent mod, which when enemies are close to us in 7-meter range, will give us 10% damage reduction. And if the enemy hits us with a melee, we will get additional 10% damage reduction for the next 5 seconds. So guys, as you can see, almost every single one of our gear pieces will give us 10 or even 20% damage increase, and when you count it 4 or 5 times, these damage buffs will become insane, and this is one of the biggest reasons of why we can double or even triple our damage. The most important thing to keep in mind is to be always close to enemies, and with full HP if possible, and this will give us stacks upon stacks of buffs. Then one more massive thing we need to use specifically are the cradle upgrades. And on the right side you can see all of them that I use. But the most important one is the tactical combo, that increases our weapon's damage by 25% for the next 4 seconds after we switch or reload a weapon. Then the agility, which after rolling our character will give us 15% damage reduction for 4 seconds. Then bounty hunter, which after we kill an unmarked enemy, our weapon's damage increases by 25%, which will last for very long 15 seconds. And lastly, we get the master tacticianer, which after using a tactical item will give us damage against bosses by 25% for the next 15 seconds. So that's why in the beginning of the fight you can see players throwing a grenade and then switching to a weapon. And this will give us the tactical item buff plus the 25 damage increase after you switch to a weapon. So overall, again, on top of everything, we get even more buffs. Then now let's take a look at the best deviant. And there are many choices, so this is more of a personal preference. I really like the polar jelly, because he complements our build very well by continuously dealing frost damage to surrounding enemies, while also increasing our damage, and if the frost vortex is formed, then it will also ice spike the enemy targets. And finally, for the food of choice, it is again up to each player. I really like the canned lunch meat, because it is super easy to make, and it will boost our max HP by 10%. But of course, if you want to maximize everything to the brim, then you can go with a damage increasing food, or anything else, depending on what you're specifically fighting. So in a quick summary, if you want to use the highest damage medium to long range build, that is made for every single situation, no matter for what PvE or PvP, and if you want to use only the best of the best items, then this is definitely the most optimized build for you. Then for the second one, we have the one-shot sniper build. The sniper setup got his name from being able to get insanely high crit damage and pretty much one-shotting anyone you see. This build will work for both PvE and PvP, as well as fighting solo bosses. So let's start off with the weapons, and we are going to be using the AWS 338 Bingo Sniper Rifle. This is currently one of the easiest and best snipers to use, that has insane damage. As for accessories, so for muzzle we will be using the large break, then for the optic we have the large optic sight, then for the magazine we have the tactical SR mag, and for ammo we have the tungsten SR ammo. And finally, for our best mod, we have the recover mark, which when we killed marked enemies we will recover 50% HP and 25% stamina, which is very useful when you shoot while moving. Then for our second weapon we have the D50 Wildfire pistol, that also will be dealing insane damage, but it's meant more for close range fights. And finally, for the third melee weapon we will be using the stun baton with the recover marked mod, that the same as the sniper will give us 50% HP and 25% stamina. Then next up we have the armor, and we will be using the boots on the ground with the slow and steady precision mod. Then the falcon gloves with the crit boost mod, which is very important because it will give us a massive crit rate boost, and for this build we are trying to stack as much crit as possible. Then next up we have the falcon hat with the first move advantage mod, and as you can see we have the 4 falcon set piece, so we will get even more set effects, like the more crit damage, reduced rolling stamina cost, and our crit is increased when our stamina is over 90%. Then we have the falcon jacket with the head guard mod, and finally the heavy duty mask with the targeted strike precision mod. And don't forget guys, the main part you need to get for this build to work is the 4-piece falcon gear. One more massive thing that we need to use specifically are the cradle upgrades, and on the right side you can see all of them that I use, but the most important ones are the tactical combo, which gives us 25% damage for 4 seconds after switching or reloading a weapon. Then the first round blast, that after reloading gives us 25% instant damage for 4 seconds. Then sprint, that gives us 5% movement speed and reduces running cost by 15%. Then deadly combo, that after hitting enemy weak points, our bullets will get a 25% damage increase for the next 3 seconds. Then the bounty hunter, which after killing enemies you marked, our weapon yet again gets increased damage by 25%, which will last for massive 15 seconds. And lastly, we have the long range enhancement, that gives us 25% damage when we hold our sniper rifle. Then now let's take a look at the best deviant, and as there are many choices, so this is more of a personal preference. I prefer the Zero Purifier because he will do a bunch of damage, attack and move automatically to the enemy direction, and this will also give us the teleportation ability as melee attacks, so this is very useful. And finally, the choice of food is again up to each player. I really like the canned lunch meat because to make it is super easy and it will boost our max HP by 10%. But of course, if you want to maximize everything to the brim, then you can go with the damage increasing food or anything else depending on what you are specifically fighting. So in a quick summary, if you want to use an insanely high damage sniper build that will one shot and destroy bosses in just a second or two, then this is the one for you. And finally, for the last one, we have the pistol only one-shot build. And unlike other builds that utilize set pieces and refilling ammo, for this one we will specifically focus only on the highest DPS possible, without having the best insane gear. So with our build we will be doing insane damage for both our main and second weapon, and we will just switch them depending on who we are fighting. So now let's start with the weapons, and we are going to be using the SOCR, the Last Valor, with all tier 5 attribute effects, and the Shrapnel Souvenir Precision mod, which when our shrapnel hits an enemy's weak point, it will automatically refill one bullet from our inventory, so we can do insane damage a lot longer. Then for our second weapon we have the D50 Wildfire pistol, that also will be dealing insane damage, but it's more meant for close range fights. And lastly, for our melee weapon we will be carrying the long axe with the Shield Breaker Violent mod, which when we hit a shielded enemy it will deal 60% shrapnel damage for 1 second. So as you can guys see, this build is called a shrapnel for a reason, because we will stack it as high as physically possible, so we could do insane damage with the rest of our buffs. Then next up we have the armor, and we will be using the Falcon Mask with the Shrapnel Carnage Violent set, then the Heavy Duty Gloves with the Crit Boost Violent mod, then the Better with Fateful Strike mod, then Lone Wolf Jacket with Healing Fortification mod, then Heavy Duty Pants with the Deadshot Violent mod, and lastly the Falcon Shoes with the Covered Advanced mod. So as you can see from pretty much all of our gear choices, we try to build as much weapon damage, reload speed and magazine capacity as much as possible, because the less time we spend reloading, the more time we can do damage. One more massive thing we need to use specifically are the cradle upgrades, and on the right side you can see all of them that I use, but the most important ones is the Rapid Fire that reduces the cooldowns of healing items by -30%, and it increases healing by 15%. Then Deviation Master that will give us a massive 50% damage against deviants. Then Tactical Combo for 25% damage boost for the next 4 seconds after you reload or switch a weapon. Then Bullet Hunt, which after killing a targeted enemy with a ranged weapon, it will give you 35% shrapnel damage for the next 15 seconds. And lastly we have the Deadly Combo, which after you hit enemy's weak point with a shrapnel bullet, then it will give us 25% more damage for the next 3 seconds. Then now let's take a look at the best deviant, and there are many choices, so this is more of a personal preference. I prefer the Upper World Spawn or the Zero Purifier, because he will do a bunch of damage, attack and move automatically to the enemy's direction, and this will also give us the teleportation ability as a melee attack, so he's very useful. But then on the other hand we have the Upper World, which gives us immunity from bunch of types of damage, so this depends on your personal playstyle. If you prefer to maximize damage and be a bit more squishier, then go with the Zero Purifier. But perhaps if you keep dying or just want to have more survivability, then go with the Upper World Protection. And finally, the food choice for this build is very important, because we will focus on the shrapnel effect, so we need to buff it as much as humanly possible. And that's why we must use the canned meat to increase our character's shrapnel damage by 20%, as this will last for 1800 seconds and are very easy to make, so I recommend to get a bunch of them. And then in a quick summary, if you want to use the highest damage medium range build that has pretty much unlimited amount of ammo and possibilities to improve it even further with the better gear, then this is the build for you. And with that said, I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or suggestions, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and not miss any more amazing content. With that said, you have an amazing day and I will see you in the next one, so take it easy Peace.